Hi everyone, I'm Aaron, a China-born global investor. Now I am the Chief Investment Officer of a US dollar family office.
Hi, I'm Diane. I'm ex-VC from Silicon Valley, and then I'm splitting my time between China and the US. I'm also running the biggest China's business podcast network.
In today's episode, I want to chat with Diane about how the Chinese podcast market has changed and how it differentiates from the US. So you might be wondering, why talking about this? Well, China is not only exporting goods, but also starting to export content and ideas through a new channel, podcast. And now we saw explosive growth of podcast right here in China over the year 2025. So let's dive deeper into this topic. Basically, we'll cover three parts: the market landscape, and then the problem with monetization, the last, the future. First question for Diane. Let's talk about the industry landscape. From your observations, what are the most critical changes in the Chinese podcast market over the last year?
Before I answer your question, I want to share that why I want to do this episode is also because US and also people outside of China has been taking notice about Chinese podcast scene. For example, right before I head back to the US, I got visitors from Stripe.
The payment company?
Payment company. Yeah. They want to work with us to some extent because their founder recently read about the Chinese podcast industry and then shared with them, oh, maybe we should start doing advertising in this domain, in this space. So they came to my office. We have a nice conversation. I think US in comparison has a serial moment. I'm not sure, Aaron, you know the show called Serial back in 2014. That's why US podcasting has really took off. It's a crime and murder kind of show, and then it became super, super popular, make podcasts go into the mainstream.
That's like 4 years ago, right?
2014.
2014, okay.
But in China, it's always a linear growth. If you really want to say there's a start of Chinese podcasts, I would say it was during COVID. I think it's more like a social condition triggered. Everyone stayed at home, and then podcast has its like intimacy, or it gives like deep connection, that kind of like a content, which is like really bring a lot of comfort to people who are really needing them. I think that was also the time Spotify started to acquire lots of content creators, studios. For example, they acquired Gimlet, and also they signed up Joe Rogan for like 100 million for their exclusive content. China, similarly, Tencent Music and Entertainment Group, they did very similar thing back in 2021, 2022. So we're one of their portfolio company as well, got investment from them by that time. They also invest in platform like the most popular podcast platform called 小宇宙right now, Little Universe. And also they are acquiring the biggest audio platform, Himalaya this year, but the deal is not closed yet. I think that's the big player front. I think for why the podcast took off, I think it's mostly because all the content became like really short attention span, like TikTok, Douyin kind of format of video. You know, the Chinese long form video for Douyin audience, do you know how long they referring long video is?
I think like 1 minute.
No, it's actually 3 minutes. It's their long,
Okay.
long content. For different platform, long is very different. For Bilibili, it's probably 10, 15 minutes. That's called long form of content.
Okay.
But in podcasting in China, it's roughly about like an hour and a half-ish. It's not quite Joe Rogan's 3 hours content, but it's getting there. So it attracts a lot of people's unmet demand for deep content, for global perspective, or for investment, for tech, and for feminism, for social issues. So those content are nearly non-existent in the China's content market. So I think podcasts get really popular because this kind of format is really meeting those people's demand. And especially last year, several influencers, celebrity, even tech founder, they start noticing, oh, podcast is really great way to convey my messages, convey my brand messages, convey my business messages. And they start doing it. And then this year you can see the explosive growth. You can see Bilibili has signed this person called Luo Yonghao, and
Yeah.
they start a show very similarly like Joe Rogan, always like 3 hours, 4 hours long content. And then it gives people more awareness to this kind of a content format. Before that, I would say the Chinese podcast audience will be like maybe not even reach 100 million people if I'm like kind of already giving the stretch.
Why do you think podcast is becoming so popular in China right now? I mean, what are the core users' needs which drives this demand?
I think back to my previous point, because all the content are became short and lack of nuances, lack of like details, and then people who are highly educated, they want global perspective. They want like nuances. They want like a lot of different perspective, not just like one narrative. I think these kind of people like start driving content creator to create more contents, and that kind of create this little ecosystem, starting with a company like us and starting with platform like Little Universe. And then they spread out to like kind of to bigger audiences. I think in the early days and platform like Little Universe, they create different like posts to attract people from Red Notes or create content to attract people from Douyin. Like little short clips, listeners' recommendation, those kind of posts to get traffic from bigger traffic place to Little Universe. I think nowadays creators have like very similar strategies like US content creator. They create longer contents on a podcast, and then also they create short clips for TikTok. They create longer content of video on YouTube, this kind of platform.
So speaking of video, you mentioned Red Note, you mentioned Douyin. I'm quite curious. There's a lot of Chinese video sites like Douyin and Bilibili. They are also entering the podcast game, right? So why has the video podcast becoming such a major trend here in China?
I think first of all the video platform, they reach their limits of their user base.
Yeah.
They have no new growth anymore. And they start seeing where should I find new growth, and they targeted podcast.
Okay.
But this is not their first time to do anything on podcast from. I think back in 2022, 3-ish, basically every big internet company have their podcast app or their like product within their app, but they all quietly go away. I think they didn't realize this domain has explosive growth opportunity, and then they just quietly died down. But this is another wave just came this year. I think it was starting by Bilibili, like I mentioned, having the collaboration with several celebrity influencer that create this like kind of content that really drives people to noticing this domain.
Okay. So from your observation, they failed the first time in 2022 when they tried to enter the podcast area. Do you think
Right.
they will make the same mistake again for this time?
I will hope there's more, the ecosystem became more mature than early 2022. Listeners' base, it has grown, and also advertise has grown, and people's understanding of podcasts has grown. So I think this is going to be less likely to fail horribly as before. You can see everyone who are audio podcast creators starting to create their video.
Yeah.
It's not because they have aesthetically content need. I think it's mostly because of the traffic play. They want to get more traffic. They want to get more people to noticing them, like putting your face there, and people will be like, oh, okay, I have seen this person, and then his content seems good, and then they will probably go into the audio platform to listen, or they just stay on the video platform. I think so. Basically, previously, most of the traffic for video creator, they only create video around 10, 15 minutes, which is the sweet spot for Bilibili and for WeChat 视频号. But nowadays, everyone trying to explore different ways.
Okay.
I think there will be more interesting content plus traffic solution for company like us, instead of just like go all the way to meet the demand of the traditional platform like Bilibili. Oh, we have to make 15 minutes video. I don't think that's the right way to do.
Okay, so we can see that there's a change in terms of how we make podcast in audio platform like Little Universe and Himalaya. And also we are transformed from audio to a combination of audio and video. If you look at the US, right, you have YouTube podcasting quite successful. So how do you think that the model in China right now for the combination of video and audio, could it be very different from the model that YouTube podcasting is using right now?
It's very different. For the platform infrastructure alone is very different. So on YouTube, if you're a creator, you put your content there, and then you get revenue share if you got a lot of views, right? Which is like significantly bigger chunk of money that can support you versus you basically get zero money revenue share from content like Himalaya, and Xiaoyuzhou has no such a thing.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the most popular way to commercialize the content is advertising. And China's advertising, they allow media buy. So which is like not a super healthy way to get sustainable content and sponsored content.
Okay. Yeah. And I have a one big question. This is a soul-searching question. Is podcasting actually make money in China?
I mean, our company, we're profitable.
Yeah, sure, Kevin. For the rest of them,
I think there's not a lot of studio like us, very few. And then I see some of the creators, and they probably like one or two people in the they creating content. I think the top tier ones, they're making money. For the rest of the content creator, even though there's huge growth of how many people creating content, how many shows has grown for the past 5-6 years, but still I can see some like on a middle tier or like kind of people who in the bottom in the subscriber number are not making money.
So this market in China is more like a pyramid format. In China, only a very few people on the top, they are making a little bit of money. And for the rest of them, they still haven't found a very good way for monetization. So here is my next question for you. What is the standard way that podcast makes money in the US? And how does it actually work in China if you compare the China model with the US model?
Yeah, let's jump back into media buy. So in the US, you can pitch your story. If they like it, they will like work with you. And then pretty much all the advertising is host read. Right, you can see
just
like
read
if like Huberman or like Joe Rogan, they have basically 5-10 minutes in the beginning. They're all advertisements. But in China, this kind of content are frowned upon for a number of reasons. For example, for the past decade, and people has brands or clients, they're so used to Red Nose, Douyin's placing ads with influencers. So they can just, you have to do content that very much in line with our product. So this episode or this short video is for my product alone. That's the only way to do it. For the host read ads, it's very hard for the brand to accept this kind of format. They're like, this is not very related to our product. Can we do it? We call it softer. Soft insert into the content, make it feel like, this is a very natural way to talk about our product. But for content creators, you can't sustain your show with this kind of advertisement model. Yeah, for example, for one of our biggest show is the daily morning show. We only have 15 minutes slot. We cannot talk about one product for the whole time because we cover basically the most important thing happened during that day in the business and tech space. So we have to push the advertising, the host read advertising, just like US, but we have a lot of hurdles from the brand and from platform itself. US have this thing called dynamic ads.
So what's that? Could you define this word?
It's a technology. For example, if you're Spotify, you create this 1 minute advertisement, and it can be inserted in any show anytime you want it. It's very easy for the platform to do it. It's not a huge technical difficulty, but when I talk to platforms in China, they're like, the brand, they don't want this kind of thing. If you bring me 10 different kind of brand, they want this kind of product, we'll create it for you. So it's an ecosystem play. And then we as content creator, it's really hard to push this kind of advertisement format. But for us, because the way of our product is created, we have to push this kind of advertisement, the host rate advertisement. So I would say we made significant progress this year to make them all like formatted as how we want it. And then we, because we are already the top show basically every day on Little Universe.
Sort of backing power, right? Sort of backing power.
Yeah. And then we use this kind of ability and to actually also place ads with other smaller shows and give them to educate the market a little bit more this year. I think this is the only way to make the content more sustainable. If you listen to a show, you realize every episode is advertisement. What would you do? You're probably gonna just never open this show again.
Yeah, right. For the advertisers, they have already get used to how they do advertisement in Douyin and RedNote. They have a very standard format. But when they are facing podcast for the very first time, they don't know how to do commercialized advertisement in podcast. So they just shift their knowledge in Douyin and RedNote to podcast.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
Which actually, in the US, they can focus on creating content. But in China, all the advertisers, they want the whole content. They don't want a very specific time frame. They want everything.
Right. There's another big issue on top of that is on RedNose, on Douyin, their commercialization is so complete and the data tracking is so mature. So if you look at a short video or look at a post on RedNote, and then you search Taobao shopping site.
And they know that.
They know that. The data can have a complete loop, right? But audio platform like Xiaoyuzhou, like Himalaya, no, they cannot do that. No. So when advertisers placing ads with us, they will be like, how do we know how it's performing? It's always come down to this question.
Okay, I see. We talked about why the market exploded last year, and we talked about how we do monetization. Now, let's look at the future, what the future might be. Well, everyone talks about AI because AI actually can change the way creators make content. So in your view, and also in your practice, how is AI influencing podcast creations in China right now?
I'll split this into two different ways. I've seen so many Chinese AI startup has tried to do some AI / podcast app for the past year, and they basically all quietly died down or just went away. Yeah. Especially in China, the podcast alone is a very small space in terms of the total market size.
Could you just give a comparison, like how small the market size is if you compare to video?
I think from last year, this year probably gonna grow a little bit. Last year will be like less than 100 million RMB.
That's really small.
Yeah, but this year I will hope it's gonna grow a little bit more because all the celebrity and all the influencers, like mainstream influencers, coming in. I've seen several AI podcast product, kind of like Google LM, those kind of product has been very popular in China. Basically like Doubao, Biden's Doubao, and also like several startup has tried this area and just summarize podcasts for people and just make it more efficient for this kind of user group to digest information quickly. And then from the creator perspective, I think everyone use AI in some to boost their productivity. There one case I want to mention is I know this content creator, they are doing basically end-to-end content creation all by AI, but it's supervised the creator and also mimic the creator writing style, talking style, and the content structure style. So basically, it is just a tool. You think you're replacing person. I think the creation process itself is directed by the people, not having the AI to create stuff on its own, which is, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, actually, I tried the AI tool you mentioned. They can mimic my sound, my voice, and they can make a very short podcast for me, like 8 to 10 minutes. That's the maximum length of the time.
I mean, it still just increased the productivity. It's a productivity tool mostly. And for listeners' perspective, they don't really care who created as long as it's quality content.
Yes. So there are some of the creators, they claim that they can make a podcast from the very beginning to the very end by just using AI.
Two people chatting, it doesn't mean it's podcast. Well, it could mean podcast, doesn't mean it's people will listen to this kind of podcast unless it's like, oh, this is a paper that I don't want to read. Can you read it for me out loud for me? It's easier for me.
Yeah,
That's for
exactly.
still for productivity purposes.
So I think there's no worry that AI is going to put podcast creators out of job.
I don't really think so. If there's gonna be a lot of AI creating things, and the AI will, I don't. First of all, I don't think AI think.
Well, we'll see. And maybe we should place a bet on this. I think it's going to be, realized in the next 2 to 3 years. Well, we'll see. So have you seen any successful examples that Chinese podcasts going global in a very successful way and get a lot of audience in the Western world?
I don't think the podcast has been taking notice in the U.S. market or outside of China's market. I think Chinese podcasts haven't been really even getting massive recognition from the Chinese market alone.
Still a long way to go.
Right, but I do think there have been some video influencers like He Tongxue, HTX Studio. They've been doing pretty good job putting their content translated on a YouTube platform, and receiving a lot of recognition. And then they're all like, wow, Chinese content could be this good quality. Yeah, that's what I observed this year. But I think just audio, no.
No. Okay. I think one of the issues is that the podcast is a little bit longer than the video. So if you transform a video from Chinese to English, it's like a 10 to 15 minutes video, which is much more easier than a 1 hour podcast dialogue from Chinese to English.
I would think it would depend on the content, even in the article space, like newsletter or like just pure written format. It's still not a lot of Chinese content.
That's true. So on the other side, I've also noticed that a lot of English language podcasts are entering the Chinese market as well. It's a reverse trend. Some people want to go out and some people want to go in. What is your take on how those English podcasts operate in China? And do you think they actually finding a successful way here?
There are some influencers or celebrity moving their content to Little Red Nose, onto Douyin. I think most of them, they have an agency. They translate the content and post it, and then sometimes they kind of helping with the connecting with the advertisers and also posting comments, replies, and stuff like that. That's very basic way of operating this kind of account. But like I said before, the ecosystem infrastructures are so different. If they don't have any other revenue model other than advertisement, it will be hard business to do.
Okay.
Just like the rest of us. I'll give one example. Brian Johnson is very popular in China. He created his presence, I think, since last year or so, because I think his son is helping him to do his content in his account in China. I think other than taking advertisements, he actually hosting a lot of events and hosting conferences for people to get to know his way of his blueprint projects, to sell his supplements in the end.
Okay.
So it depends on what kind of a business model that you have. If it's just pure advertisement play, I would recommend maybe wait a little to see if you have other revenue model instead.
That's a fair suggestion. Yeah. One last question. What is your guess or your forecast for 2026 that the key trend for China's podcast market? Just one guess.
I think the video podcast trend will continue. Basically, everyone starts seeing podcast is a acceptable format, and they will start to doing the same thing. I mean, this year we got a lot of inquiries for people who are doing content in different domain, even like they are a famous host or they're like entrepreneurs or they're professional in some domains. They're all looking to get into podcast space. I think it will be more crowded, but I do think this will create a network effect. I would like to see more and more people get into listening to podcasts, not just like creating more. And then I would also like to see there's more content like serial or like This Is American Life, and this all kind of investigating journalism kind of content will be more diverse content. But right now, if it's all just interviews, it's so boring.
Yeah, it should be like a more solo, more dialogue.
So for the past week, there were several guests I want to invite to be on my show. They were like, "Oh, I'm going to this show and this show and this show," or I was on several other shows before. So there's too many shows and very little guests to be on. So that's
There's not enough guests.
not enough guests.
Yeah, and I feel like the boundary between video and audio actually becoming more blurred.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I also know people in the industry, they just very old school.
Yeah.
They're like, I start doing podcasts because I don't want to show my face.
That's a wrong conception,
My
right?
face is-
I've heard about that, but that's the wrong conception for 2026.
No, I mean, even in the US, there are a lot of just audio alone shows. They're pretty well produced. They give you different enjoyments. You don't have to watch a video. You don't have to watch their face. I think there's always long tail series
Yeah, always.
compatible with every domain. Yeah.
Okay, that's all for today's episode. And I want to thank you, Diane, for sharing your insight for the China podcast market.
Yeah, if you have any other question about Chinese podcast scene, this industry, or simply want to work with podcast company or studio like us, just let us know. Write us a comment, and then we'll get back to you.
Yeah,
And end of the year.
and see you next year.